Hi, I'm Cody Anderson, one of the pastors here at Parker United Methodist Church. Well, we are just a few weeks away from Election Day. Are you excited? I know in the conversations that I have been having over the last few weeks, there is this feeling of excitement for it all to be over, and also knowing what we've lived over the past years that it will not be over, right? Because there are so many tensions or so much divisiveness that this is one of those things that we have had to live with for years. It's hard right now, especially when you're being inundated with all of the commercials, all of the advertisements, and then all of the political discussions that you're having with family and friends on top of it. So we're thinking about how do we live into this moment as faithful disciples of Jesus Christ? What are we called to do in this season? And we're doing that through a sermon series that we're calling Do Unto Others, a campaign for kindness. Thinking about the ways that we can open up dialogue with others who believe differently than we do, how we can see the image of God in them, and how we might be able to be agents of peace and kindness and hope, especially during this time. So many of you know, but I took on the role of being a youth minister the last a little over a year and a half ago. It has been a wonderful thing. I love being with our youth. They are fabulous. Their faith is one of those faiths that they're learning and growing, and they're wrestling with things, and I love to see them on that journey. So this summer, I was fortunate enough to be able to take them on a mission trip. Now, if you've ever been on a mission trip with teenagers, you know that there are a lot of feelings, a lot of tiredness that comes out, a lot of grace that is needed. And so the first night that we were together, I sat around with our teens and we talked about how we were going to offer grace to one another, how we were going to be able to realize that we were all coming together to do this work and that we all had the best intentions in mind. So I shared this story that I had just a few weeks ago with my youngest son, Jackson, who is a freshman this year. We were driving in the car. I don't even know where we were driving. I'd had a really long, exhausted day, and I was tired. And I had had days and days and days of that, so I wasn't my best self. And Jackson was talking with me, and we were having a discussion that apparently got a little intense. I don't even remember what the discussion was about, but I said something to Jackson, and he said the greatest thing to me. He said, "I'm just going to assume that you are really tired right now and you didn't mean what you just said." It made me stop, made me pause, and made me think about what I had just said and how he was feeling from those conversations, those words that I was speaking. And he offered me this gift of grace. And so that became our mantra on the mission trip. When somebody was irritating us, when somebody said something that was hurtful to us, when we were not feeling like we were being heard, we would often pause and say to that person, "I'm going to assume that you're tired and you didn't mean what you just said." It was a moment of offering grace to somebody else. Can you imagine what that would be like if we did that right now in our society? Offered these moments of grace, offering these moments of realizing that we all are tired, that we all are not probably in our best frame of mind, and just to be able to stop and offer that moment of grace instead of jumping to a nasty conclusion or erupting in a huge argument. So while we were on this mission trip, there was some feelings and stuff going on, and one of our youth came up to me and said, "Miss Cody, this kid on this mission trip, he's my op." And I had to get out my dictionary of teenage slang that they're using these days. And what does op mean? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Well, it turns out that op is a bad thing. It's like your opponent. And so this youth was saying, this person is my opponent right now. There's somebody that I'm disagreeing with. We're not seeing eye to eye. We're going at it head to head. And I said to this teen, I said, they might be your op in this moment, but I want you to take a second and step back and see the common ground that you have with this other person. What are the things that you guys have in common? What are the things that you both are passionate about? What are you working towards, especially on this trip together? And when they began to really reflect and to think about those things that they had in common, they realized that they had more in common than they didn't. And they were able to see them with fresh eyes, with a new perspective. So I wonder what that would be like if we did that. If instead of seeing people as an op, as an opponent, as somebody who has completely different political views than we do, if we were able to take a pause and we were able to think about the common ground that we might actually have, that we might actually be able to engage in conversation and to offer grace when we feel like we're not being heard, or when someone is coming at us from a place of anger, and maybe help them to see that we all are on this team together, this team of trying to do our best and trying to follow God. So because of this season, because it's so stressful, I bought this beautiful little book. It's called Listening, Praying in a Noisy World by Reuben P. Job, or Job, whichever. This book is a beautiful little book. It has different reflections that you can have every day. But there's this beautiful prayer that I just wanted to invite us into as we think about going into our spaces. It's from week 3, and it says this: Lover of all who are lost, uncertain and alone, confused and frightened, arrogant and disrespectful, anxious and fearful, all who are seeking a safe and secure home, and all who are already comfortably at home in your presence. Come to me now and make yourself known to me as I seek to quiet the noise of the world, the anxiety of my heart and mind, and the call of unfinished tasks, so that I may recognize and I may welcome your voice, embrace your presence, understand your call, and invite you to change me more and more into that wonderful image that you have of me as your faithful, loving, and obedient child. You see, in these times, we have to take a moment to pause, to pray, to center ourselves in God's love. There's that scripture that we heard a couple weeks ago from 1 John, where we talks about abiding in God's love, that it's the only way that we can love other people, because love comes from God. And so we have to abide in God's love. And one of those ways that we do that is by praying that God would come to us now, that God would make God's self known to us. And as we seek to get away from the noise, that God would quiet our spirit so that we could listen to God's voice, and then to be able to hear the voices who are around us. So what is the common ground that we are called to in this moment? What are those commonalities that we have that might be able to move us out of these divisive spaces and be able to bring us together? I'm going to leave you with one of our favorites, Kate Bowler, from her book, Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day. And in this, she has this devotion called When You Judge Everyone. She starts out with Romans 12, verse 21. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And she writes, It will be no surprise to you when I say that we're living in a historical moment of very little compassion for other people's politics. We're drowning in our disgust for others. At least I am at times. Watch my eyes when I read a bumper sticker I find offensive. It looks like I've been doused in gasoline. I learned a beautiful lesson from a nurse named Christy Watson about what it takes to overcome feelings of judgment. Nurses don't ask if the patient tried to prevent the illness that brought them into the hospital. They don't wonder aloud if the patient's sickness puts their own health at risk. Instead, they must cultivate tremendous empathy as they tend to the sick and suffering, regardless of who they are or what they have done. What if it is easy to judge? And one nurse responded, quoting Mother Teresa, "If you judge people, you have no time to love them." May we find little time to judge people today because we are so terribly busy loving them. Maybe that should be our bumper sticker during this season. If you judge people, you have no time to love them. So let us work on not judging others. Let us work on finding those common spaces. Let us work on extending grace, even when we feel like there's harm towards us, that we might see the better part of the people that we are discussing things with. And may we be transformed in our own hearts as we abide in God's love, finding the places where we do have commonalities and finding places where we can go to loving others instead of judging them. Keep doing the hard work, my friends. Find that space of quiet and be centered in God's love.